what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, bringing you the podcast that's meant to see you be happy, healthy, and wealthy by not being sick, scared, and stupid. Today's guest is a new friend of mine, someone I've recently met, or should I say come into my life. Maybe we came into each other's. He comes from a military background like myself, but this is the real deal. He's a former Special Forces Green Beret medic. He's probably already raising his eyebrows at me for outing him so fast, but too bad. I'm going to do it anyway. He's run the gamut as far as in having some tough upbringing, overcoming adversity, starting businesses, becoming a father, a multi-faceted serial entrepreneur, loving husband, and now a proud Texan, originally hailing from California, but now by way of the Texas Hill Country, my good friend that I'm happy to bring today, Brad Adair.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for having us here, man, in the cool ranch abode you got.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a work in progress, as you can see, and especially with spring. I mean, no greater metaphor for life than the weeds really popping up everywhere. I mean, but it's awesome. You know, I mean, I'm happy to have you guys here, and bringing new people here always helps me to kind of remember just how good I have it. You know, a lot of people think like, wow, that's awesome. You got these free range chickens and it sets the vibe. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Most of the time I just focus on the fact that I got to clean up their poop off my sidewalk before you came. And, you know, but it is cool. So thanks for coming here, man, and refreshing my gratitude on what I got.
Well, you're a great host, and you came a long way to be here, right? You know, you were in Hawaii before this with family, California before that, you know, growing family, transitioning from the military into business and like trying to figure things out, battling depression and, you know, stuff as a kid and things, you know, that were tough for you. Like what started you on this, this whole thing of like, I'm going to be a fucking Green Beret one day? Cause like, I'm sure a lot of people have that aspiration and never do it or try and fail.
Yeah.
But you didn't have necessarily the, you know, motivator to get you there, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of found it on your own. Like take us through what it was like. You know, before Brad was the cool Green Beret, the loving husband, the wonderful father, the successful business, like take us back to where it was the guy that you talk about in your book as I used to be depressed, anxious, and a loser.
Yeah.
To quote. Like, what's that?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because, you know, a lot of that is my interpretation. I had a pretty privileged upbringing in a lot of ways, but as you mentioned and as I wrote in my book, that a lot of times middle-class kids wish they had a hard life, wish they had parents who were so much worse off than them, because then it would give a clear, defined path to a justified victimhood that you can then carry as an identity for the rest of your life. But when you grow up good and your parents are in your life and they're doing well and you're not, you may want for everything, but you don't need anything. Yeah. You become this person who's sort of a victim of the cultural comfort that we all enjoy. And then you start to search for things. You wish to multiply and amplify the little bits of negativity that do occur to you and do occur in your life as a method of creating your identity. And so I lived in that victim mentality for a lot of my life as a kid. I allowed myself to see myself as unathletic. I'm just not an athletic guy. I'm not naturally gifted. I'm you know, I grew up with a brother who is very naturally athletic. Like, and so to see like that some things come easily, you know, in this realm to him and not to me, I allowed that to perpetuate like further and further. And eventually it got to, there were a few tipping points in my life that I can really point to and say like were big turns for me. One of them was joining the wrestling team in high school. And I think just about anybody who gets into grappling or mixed martial arts or martial arts in general says that it's a massively transformative experience for you, especially if you don't have that. And so doing that gave me a physical confidence to kind of overcome some bullying that I was encountering, which like I never even had to confront the people who were kind of treating me like shit. I simply had to, I just walked around with a different aura. And then all of a sudden, like, I got my first girlfriend, and I was realized that like you don't necessarily have to have a goal or a direction, but you have to kind of be doing something. You can't be pond water, but you can be water flowing in some direction. And so I didn't have these conscious thoughts at that time, but I did start to realize that nothing's going to come to you for free. And so I started seeking more and more difficult things for myself. And then I would quit those things and go back to being a bum. And then I would get sick of that, and then I would seek something out. And so eventually, after one of my phases of depression, after like high school and, early in college, I was like, this just isn't for me, man. Like, I need to seek adversity and challenge. And I was like, I'm going to join the military. There's a war going on. What better way, the quintessential way to sort of like test your mettle as a young man is like, go fight in a war, right? And that's like the romanticized version of like your late childhood as a young man, and your journey into manhood, conscription service in the military, or a draft, or voluntary service, and you go and fight in a war. So I did that, and somehow through the process, getting duped by recruiters, you might call it, they said because I went in there just wanting basic infantry. Yeah. And then I was like, well, maybe I want to join Ranger Battalion. Because those are the guys that are getting in the most action, and that's what I want. I don't want a career here. I want the most transformative experience I can find. And the guy's like, well, what about Special Forces? And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that, And he's like, the Army will get you ready for that. That was my the recruiter lied to me. Part of my recruitment story was the Army will get you ready for that. And I was like, love that. Yeah, hell no. Hell no. But the one thing I will credit the military with just in general is they put you in a sink or swim environment. And you're going to sink or you're going to swim. And the good thing is there's always somebody to look up to, because there's a lot of great individuals. And there's a lot of terrible individuals as well. Yeah. But luckily, I fell in line with people that I could look up to, and people that kind of took an interest in seeing me succeed. And I got fit despite, the Army, it's kind of pathetic nowadays. If you get caught working out extra, you get in trouble. And so we would form secret workout groups in the laundry room and be using each other for weight, doing squats and lunges and push-ups, and doing it after the lights were turned off at night. And so again, I came into this aspect of pain is a motivator, whether it is brought to you or you bring it on yourself. And without motivators, we don't really do anything, So that kind of painful motivation, massive positive change, let go of it all, go into a depression, realize what you were doing recently was way better than what you're doing now. That happened over and over again until, I don't know, man, maybe my mid-20s. Even as a Green Beret, I would catch myself slipping, but really it's sort of the philosophy now is that I'm going to slip. I'm going to have depression. Yeah. I'm going to have a days of hey, I just don't feel like doing it, and I'm never going to be motivated. And really, it's just abbreviating that depressive window or the anxious window of time in my life, and just abbreviating it as much as possible. And so that's kind of where I'm at today, at least from the mental health journey, is it's going to be a daily struggle, and we're going to get through it, with systems and processes that are generated from taking a personal interest in my own physical and mental health.
Systems and processes. Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, we were just talking about James Clear before,
right.
About not rising to the levels of our goals, but fall into the strengths of systems. Like anybody, you can have an aspiration and lofty, goals, but without visualization, specificity, and a system of implementation, it pretty much stays lofty. Two things I want to kind of jump on what you said before. Number one, pond water. Love that. Mm-hmm. That's cool. I think pond water, stagnant.
Yeah.
Stale, flat, dead. I mean, there's some nice
There's
ponds.
some movement, in pond water.
There's some nice ponds. Like if it's a koi pond, I can be like, yeah, I can dig that. But in your metaphor, pond water compared to flowing, pristine, crystallized, life-giving, yeah, big difference. And second thing, who the fuck bullies this guy? Like, I'd want to know that. I mean, this dude's a monster. Like, who bullies this dude?
Well, I wrestled in high school. The lowest weight class I wrestled was 135 pounds, and I'm 226 pounds right now. So I was a late bloomer, and I was just kind of behind everybody. Like, I didn't really hit my growth spurt until like my senior year in high school. So I was just almost as if, like, when I was like a sophomore, I should have still been like in middle school, you know, like. I was just skinny,
yeah.
Docile.
You were so tall and all that stuff?
I grew like 2 more inches after high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so I broke 6 foot in high school. I'm 6'3" now, but I didn't break. I went from like 6'1" to 6'3" in the college years. So nice. A little bit of a late bloomer. So I was, like I said, 135 to 152 pounds was the weight classes I wrestled, and I did not intentionally have to cut weight. Like I just showed up at those weights.
God,
like,
man, that's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that. I mean, you know, and I think also, you know, being bullied is not so much about your size as it is your presence and your ability and how you carry yourself, because it's well studied, it's well known that predators look for, like in real life, predators look for the animal that's limping a little bit. But also human predators look for people who don't look like they're going to be effective at defending themselves. So once you possess that ability, you know, that goes away.
Man, so the Army got it out of you then, right? Like you said, as far as in, you know, being a little bit of timid or reluctant to jump into Special Forces. Like I was right there with you, man. Like went to the recruiter. Same thing, like, oh man, you're smart, you did well in the ASVAB, you have a clean background, you don't want to go infantry, like do this instead. This security forces is way more your speed, and you got the right GT. And I was like, cool, do they still deploy to Iraq? Oh yeah, they're OIF-1, right? I'm like, perfect. Yeah. Not the same, but still a very transformative experience. Like, was your experience as transformative as you'd hoped it would have been, and how did the Army get out of you what it needed to, so to speak? And I don't mean that in a taking way, but in a way of, like, you know, it conjured that that warrior in you to come out.
Well, I think the big thing with the military is not the government aspect, and it's not the drill sergeants, you know, when you go to basic training and stuff like that. It's that it puts you in an environment, and it's a very meritocratic environment. Like you can survive, and you and I both know there are people who do full careers in the military with no competency whatsoever, and you're hardly even certain if they have a pulse or not, but they're there existing in a location. So they're, you know, in that way, they do their full career. But there are also people that you meet that you're like, this guy is amazing. Like, he's jacked. He's nice. He's like a good instructor. He's really well known, like well read and well researched on the subject. Like, and then also the military demands that you do not just turn in an assignment. Like in college, like right now, like you don't just turn in an assignment and hope for a B. Like, I'm just going to do like B level grade and just try to get it. It's like, if somebody even, if it is pass or fail, and it's like 99% or higher, it is required to pass. Like, because if they find one mistake, they just send it right back to you, and they're like, there's still mistakes in here, fix it. And they will not go through and annotate every single mistake and issue. It's like, nope, I see mistakes, just take it right back. Like, and so you do learn. It's not, I mean, it's up to you to become the type of individual who strives for that first time go. That's how, that's the saying that you're familiar with, but that means that like when I hand in, whether it's a leave form or a request to do training or a request to buy ammunition to do training or whatever it is, that first time go could mean that if they're not going to look at it for 2 weeks and then they look at it and determine it, and then it's another 2 weeks, like you can't have that. So you have to build that desire for that first time go in order to be efficient and be a competent and well-functioning member of your team. And so it's not the government, it's the fact that you're put in an environment with high caliber individuals who are just not going to accept you not giving your best. Like you can't really be fired like you can, but you may not be anywhere that you want to be. They will stick you in a cave somewhere, like
radio tower. And
yeah. You might be the only person like working in an arms room or a supply locker or whatever it is, if you don't become that person. So it's sink or swim. You can still be fully employed. You can still do a full career in the arms room. And that's not to say the arms room is always bad, but there is a bit of a reputation for people who get sent to
the boilers. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so really fear of that, like, because it's like, man, I'm here for at least 4 more years. Do I want to go to the 82nd Airborne and be treated like a cherry private? Or do I want to continue to train and get education from, the previous generation of Green Berets who have an interest in seeing me succeed, but also are not going to allow me to succeed if I don't present the full competency that is required. Yeah. So it's like, do you want to stay in this environment where you're treated well and you have all this stuff, or do you want to go get treated like shit? So that is really what did it. And I mean, I think if I didn't shoot for that very high goal of going to Special Forces, I would not have had a high enough occasion to rise to. So, like if I would have just shot for basic infantrymen, I would have done fine. I would have done well. I would have probably got out after 4 years and gone on with my life, you know, but really being put in that environment with those individuals who are literally the top 1% of the population, like, and being surrounded by them, which is, you and I both know, having mentors is huge, right?
Yeah. God, man. So what, you're talking about having such hyper focus on being a Green Beret, what it takes to become one, right? Like the identity that's required, because it's not just like, oh, that sounds like a cool thing to do, I guess I'll try it. It's like, you are that. You have to become that. You have to be fully immersed in that. You have to totally give yourself and want to do that, right? Because it's not about having just the goal of it. It's like the desire has to meet that. It's the desire that's going to carry you to attain that. It's not just like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to be Green Berets.
Yeah.
A lot of people that want to be pilots and doctors and lawyers and professional athletes or good parents. But like the daily habits of what's required is what I think turns a lot of people off. Because once they realize like, fuck, that's what it takes. Like, oh, I don't want to do that bad.
Yeah.
Life isn't so bad over here. But like, clearly you found something there that made you want to stay. So what made you want to divert once you kind of got, let's say, what you came for out of it and start pursuing the entrepreneurial path?
Yeah. Well, there was honestly like some issues with leadership in the military.
No.
Yeah. No. And I don't like to be the person who goes like, like there's always a phrase of like, yeah, the Army's never good about talent management. I've heard that before and stuff. And I've given up on saying that. And so
the Marine Corps is not much better on talent management.
Yeah. But really, like, what it was that I kept asking for things and working hard and expecting to be rewarded, almost like playing the role of like a good dog, like I'm going to do exactly what you asked me to, and I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do the best of my abilities. I was getting good NCOERs. I was rated top 3, top 2, and then number 1 in my 3 years on my ODA. So like I was rated very well the whole time, and I was respected by my leadership. But then we have this leadership change, as common in the military, and all of a sudden, like, it's like, nope, it's like, it's like, it's not going here. And there was like, almost like a fear, and I'm totally assuming this, a fear of the competent senior individual, as if I would somehow usurp the authority of the like weaker appointed leader. Like, because like people would bring me their problems rather than this guy, and that should be the case. Like, you don't bother the boss with everything,
right?
But the bosses were kind of getting upset about that, and it's like, well, that's just what's going to happen. They don't know you, right? Like, and I felt like all of a sudden I had slots to go to like schools and all of these things, and they started getting stripped away from me and promises of, we'll get those back for you. Don't worry. Like, it's not a big deal. It's just not right now. It's not no, it's just not right now. And then next thing you know, like, I'm on a list. Like, I've just bought a house. I've been told I'm going to stay in Colorado for at least a few more years. And then within 6 months, I'm being told, you got to pick. Do you want to go to North Carolina, which is the schoolhouse to train the next level of Green Berets, Germany, which is just another like duty station, or pick something, but you're not staying here. And I'm like, bro, I would not have bought this house, like, and so that really soured me big time. Is that like one chain of, or one leadership team can make you these promises, and then like, just like that, they're snatched away just because of a possible personality conflict. And so I realized that like, I got to just take care of me, and that at this point I'm an E6. On my packet is being submitted to make E7, and I've only been in the military 7 years. That's as fast as you can make lightning. E7.
It's lightning.
Yeah, and so I do it. I make 7 in 7, or in at least less than 8. I was in my 7th year.
God, that's lightning.
And I go to
Jesus, that's good.
It's as fast as you can make it.
Incredible.
I made 6 in 4, and then 7 in 7. That's as fast as you can do. I made sergeant in 2. Like, I mean, that's like, because of the Special Forces pipeline.
Sure.
Like, that's just the way it works for you. But it is literally as fast as you can make it. There was no like behavioral delays, like,
needs too.
Yeah, and so I'm sitting here thinking like I'm doing everything right, and all of a sudden now nothing's going right for me, and I realize I'm totally powerless. And so I left my duty station. I chose Hawaii, and it was an awesome opportunity. And so I go over there, and it's just kind of more of the same, top heavy leadership, bureaucracy, and I realized like I start getting hit up for my E8 packet after a couple years. I'm like, ooh, dude. So for the people that don't know, when you go from 7 to 8, you leave working with the boys and you become an administrative guy.
Yeah.
And so you're not going out, jumping out of airplanes, shooting machine guns and riding motorcycles and, all the cool toys and stuff. You largely become administrative, and you're used more for your brain than your back, kind of thing, And so that was really, I was like, I gotta start planning my exit strategy. And that's when, in 2018, as I was leaving the Special Forces teams, I decided I'm going to start a business out of one of my hobbies, which was race cars, like building cars. And so I started that business and was really fortunate. I got hooked up with a few influencers that really like supported me early in the beginning, started having success in business, and took the business with me to Hawaii. And all of a sudden I didn't want to be in the military anymore, because I'm making $14,000 a month doing my business. And now the military is kind of hindering me, especially once COVID came around and we weren't running missions. It was just telework. You're at home all day, like tied to a computer as a leash. And so I got pretty sour towards the military, to be honest with you, and I was very ready to leave. But I was making 6 figures, so I was like, let's just get out of here, and it was no longer serving me.
And for anybody that doesn't know, you don't join for the money. That's damn sure. I could see that as definitely being a catalyst to want to get out. So like, what was the the evaluation process for you to do that? Was it just that obvious and easy to say like, this seems like it's kind of run its course militarily, and this seems like it's more profitable in the future, like something I want to be doing, or like, hey, I've learned a shit ton from these guys. I've had a great experience, thank you, but now I'm ready to take that. And
So a lot of it came about with the COVID vaccine thing too. Just in transparency, like I took over 6 vaccines while I was in the military. Like I have no issues with like I was worldwide deployable. So in the same year I would get something that was endemic to Africa, as was Asia, as was, anywhere.
When that came up for me, and people were like, dude, you're not worried about it? I was like, I'm stuck with so much shit that what's another one? What's one more? I mean, and so I was like, I didn't like a lot of the treatment that we were getting surrounding it. It was a little bit weird. And so being a medic, I was in a medical role. And I would be trying to tell people like, look, here's this and this. And then there would be people like berating me for giving what's known as informed consent. And it was like, I'm not going to sit here and tell them that we know all the stuff about it. So again, more stuff that was kind of pushing me like, like you can't force me to do this, to kind of go against the oath that we take as medical providers. And so again, I felt ready to leave, and the money certainly was not, like holding me back. And then, but I'm not one of those people that draws hard lines. I'm not saying like you can always apologize, I can always forgive, and we can always move on. And so I always kept the door open, but then orders to Germany came down, and I was like, I can't have my wife owns a business as well. I own a small business. We can't take businesses to Germany. Like our businesses cannot function. Like I don't know what the deal would be renting a warehouse there, importing products, and some of the products would come from Germany to America and then go back to Germany, like in order for my business. And it's like, how would that, like, we couldn't make it work. And we tried to use that as justification to just stay stateside. And they said no. And I said, all right, well then here's my declination of orders statement. I'm out. And so if you can't support me and my wife and our ability to make money, like, if it's really our only concern is where you are at from a army perspective and not in your personal journey or your wife's employment or her ability to be an entrepreneur, if they can just say like, yeah, none of that matters to us, you go where we tell you, then I felt like very much so like, yeah, sorry. Like, then you said that at just the right time, because I have less than 18 months and I'm going to sign this piece of paper that says that we're done. And I did, and I got to talk, all the sergeant majors want to talk to you. You sure you know what you're getting into? And I was like, yeah, I do, bro. I'd love to stay. I'd love having 2 incomes. I love shooting machine guns and jumping out of airplanes with the boys. Like, who doesn't love that stuff? Like, come on, I love it, But you guys are telling me that you can't even make one small adjustment, and they wouldn't. They stood on their ground. They said, no, it's that or nothing. So that was the decision, man. This makes me think of the line from Rambo. Like, you're expendable.
Yeah.
What means expendable, Rambo? Like, you're expendable. We are expendable. You're an asset.
You're a name on a spreadsheet, and that's the thing is, one of the greatest leadership lessons that I learned the hard way was from my time in the military. And it was that when you're a leader, if you're in middle management or something, you have to smile down and up. You can't just frown down and smile up. Because if you do nothing but give bad news to your people that you're in charge of, and you don't ever stand up for yourself or for them, when the people above you go against something that you've already maybe promised to your subordinates, you lose respect like instantaneously, like for people. And I saw that happen on several occasions, and it's like, but you told us this, man. And it's like, yeah, but command says this, and it's like, Come on. What about Band of Brothers, Dick Winters, like all these like legendary leaders that you expect to see, and it doesn't happen, So, I make sure to apply that, in my business and everything now.
I got tired of everybody above me, ranked above me, being my boss, essentially. Could be. I mean, granted, obviously people don't have jurisdiction over you and can't delegate orders to you and stuff like that, but if push came to shove and I was walking around any base and someone outranked me, they could say, hey, devil dog, don't do blank. And I'm like, fuck, I'm walking with my girlfriend to the PX. Like, give me a break, dude.
Yeah.
But like, literally. And so people think they have, tough working environments. It's like, in the military, anyone that outranks you essentially can tell you to do something that you do not want to do on the spot at a moment's notice. And that sucked. Talking about, whether it's the arms room or the squad bay or the gear locker or whatever, like our thing was always the boiler room on ship.
Yeah.
And I can remember vividly one company gunnery sergeant get on the phone. That's where we would send people when they would get in trouble. We'd like send them to the boiler room. It's like, you not want to go to the fucking boiler room. Just think about it. It's the boiler, diesel fuel on the boat. It's loud. It's super hot. It's super humid. You don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And I can remember one of our company guys like, yeah, I got a couple of Marines I'm going to send down there to the. Hey, give me the boiler. Hey, this is Gunny blank. Give me the boiler room. And you're like, oh shit. Like. It's like, yeah, I got a couple Marines for Alpha Company. Yeah, I'm going to send them down there to you. Oh yeah. Yeah. Burn their ass. I'm like, this guy loves this shit, So it's like, I fucking hate you in one hand, but at the same time, I can't help but laughing because it's amazing. Like the sadistic cynicism of all that is something that I miss. I'm glad to be sitting in a comfortable leather chair in a beautiful homestead, talking about it now, but like being there, man, you don't do it for the money. You definitely don't get treated. Your individualism is not always the priority, right? The mission's always the priority, of course. And so you get forgotten amongst that. So like, still, like you said, jumping out of planes rules, shooting machine guns is fucking awesome. But like, I would tell people that it's like 1%.
It is, yeah.
But that 1% makes it worth it. The other 99% that you're training, preparing, tolerating, going
filling
through
out the paperwork,
going through the ringer, to eventually like, the civilian life doesn't seem so bad, and like the struggle of an entrepreneur seems more appealing. So like, where did that start for you? Like what were those first phases like of business? Because like I want to let people know, like, hey man, entrepreneurship, if you want freedom, if you value your time, if you want to be your own boss and truly decide how you spend and plan each day, like that's what it's about. But it comes with the tax of the pressure or the stress of that life and that freedom.
So I have a lot of things, and as you know, I do mentor some people, whether it's just for like mindset, whether they're in the military, transitioning out, or starting business. And so I have a few things that I like to tell people, like you have to have a plan, but you cannot cling to that plan. Like, because it's the old Mike Tyson saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And you will get punched in the face like 3 times a week as an entrepreneur. And it will be like bizarre stuff comes out of nowhere. And so, you'll get a letter in the mail that says like, hey, you need to change your entire branding because it looks a little bit like this other company's and we're willing to take you to court over it. And it's like, but we don't have the same name we're not in the same anything. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to spend 40 grand to figure out who's right in court, or do you just want to do it? And that kind of stuff happens like at least a couple times a year. Not like obviously changing branding, but that level of like, like, where you're just like, you're just gonna like literally just sit in a dark room with nothing, and you're just like, think like, I'm totally fine if the rapture happens right now. Like,
fucking
like,
take it.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not gonna like kill myself, but like, man, if like that tree outside falls on me right now, just make it quick. And like, I'm not gonna try to run. And it's like, okay, it didn't happen. How are we gonna figure it out? That just that happens a lot. And so you have to have a self-improvement practice. Like, number one, no matter what, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a self-improvement practice. You have to have, for me, a spiritual practice. I really got back into Christianity, but I don't believe in, I'm a Presbyterian by faith, but I don't believe in only reading the Bible. Like I read Eastern religions, and I read Stoicism and various forms of philosophy and all that stuff.
Yep.
They can all help you. Like they can help you in certain ways, but you have to develop a mental health approach. And I'm more into mental health now than I've ever been in my life. And I mean, about that.
Yeah.
You've kind of set me up with some stuff recently. And like, there's been more times in the last few months, like really year, I've been out about 2 years now. It's actually 2 years last month that I've been out, and I'm skipping workouts to just meditate for an hour.
Yep.
Like I simply don't have the option. If I don't work out by 10 a.m., I've got too much stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sacrifice my evenings with my kids to pump iron in the garage.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's like, hey, like at the same time, my kids are between the ages of 1 and 5 for a very short period of time. It's a magical time. I'm not letting that go at all. I can pump iron the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I have been much more frequently choosing to meditate. I'm not going to think about the problems of the world or anything. I'll just breathe intentionally for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And having that practice gives you the ability to make decisions from a solid place. Like, because if you're the person who makes a decision when you're afraid, and I see it. I mean, I walked into a local store the other day, and the owner was literally like about to have a panic attack, running around like talking about all this, like the books and the this and the losses and this, and it's like I'm just a bystander in here right now. I don't run your business how you want to run your business, but if the customer is seeing this, what is it like in your life?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm in this tiny, our realities overlap for maybe 30 seconds, and all I know about you is a massive amount of anxiety and chaos. And that is where the majority of entrepreneurs are. Yeah. And that is why the majority of entrepreneurs fail eventually, is because eventually at some point, the pain of maintaining your business becomes more than it is to just admit failure. Yeah. Right? And so if you don't have that mental health practice, if you don't have the ability to manage your depression, your anxiety, and your reactions to how things come at you, you'll never make it. So step one, develop a self-improvement practice. I think spiritual as well. That's a major thing. And then two, become a person who gets good at writing. Like you have to write. You need to write out every day, like something, right? Like you journal probably, like I journal, like we've had the same mentor in the past, and I've had other mentors. Everybody that is successful journals to some extent. Yeah. Like it's like you have to, and there's the statistics of if you write your goals out, it's like 1% of the population, but those are also the 1% of the population that are like the top earners. Yeah. And it's like everybody else has goals, but they either can't tell them to you, like they're not clearly defined, or they don't write them down. But the people who have clear defined goals and they're written down are the ones who are successful. So clearly defined goals and a process to achieve them in some way. And so that's kind of leads into like, well, how do you develop your processes, right? Well, I always tell people, you have to become a planner. Like you can't be the person who just kind of shows up to work every day with his hands in his pockets and be like, look, I'm ready to go. I'm down. I could show up at every phase of my career in the military, with the exception of a few days here and there where I was the guy who was teaching, or I was the guy in charge for the day, which doesn't happen until you're, higher ranking, E6, E7. Like, for the most part, you can just show up, right time, right place, right uniform. That's all that matters. But when you're the boss, you cannot just show up at the right time, the right place, and in the right uniform. You also have to have the plan for everyone else. Yeah. And so if you even try to, if you're a solopreneur or a one-man business, one-woman business, let's say you're writing blogs or you're creating art, like, you know, you want to paint this and get rid of it, and say, at some point you're going to hire help in some way. And they're going to need to know your brand. They're going to need to know your goals. And if you can't tell them that, they cannot produce as good of a product for you as they would if you would have just told them that. You know, if you would have your goals clearly defined. So it's not just for you. It's also for anybody who you're going to have help you. Like, one of the first things that you'll do if you sit down with a coach, they're going to ask you, what are your goals? Right? It's, what are your goals? Like, what do you want? What do you want to get out of this relationship here? And if you say, I don't know, to me, okay, well, we need to get you into being somebody who knows. Yeah. Like, you know, and so one of my favorite sayings for that is, be more interested than interesting. It's a Dale Carnegie. Yeah. Somebody told me that.
Ask why before telling why.
Yeah. So I learned that when I was still dating, you know, and it said, like, don't be the guy who asks the girl a lot of questions and be interested in her. Don't be trying to be cool. Yeah. Because eventually that isn't cool. And so if you can carry that into your life to where you can, one, if somebody's going to hire you, you need to know what questions to ask to find out their vision if you're going to help them create their vision.
You hear that?
You know? So so if you're a marketing person and you want to be hired as a freelance marketing agency or whatever, you have to have a huge questionnaire. Like, I'm sure you've done branding and all of this stuff that will come up. It has to be done. So you have to be good at asking questions. And you also have to be able to aim that, you know, Silence of the Lambs, when they say, have you ever aimed that powerful introspection at yourself, Dr. Lecter, you know? Like,
one of my favorite movies.
Because he's always like psychoanalyzing people, and he's deadly accurate.
She at him.
Yeah, but then they're like, yo, you're the guy living in a cage who eats people. Yeah. Did you ever think about that? Yeah. But yeah, so turn your powers of introspection after you've gotten good at asking other people questions. Start asking yourself those same questions. Why do you want to do it? How do you think you're going to do it? And then write it out. Yeah. And so in my book, I use the mind storm, we call it. And I didn't come up with that term. It's a brainstorm kind of thing. I borrowed that. I think it was Brian Tracy. But basically, you just write for 5 to 10 minutes sometimes, every possible outcome that it could possibly be. And it's very cathartic. Like, I mean, to just write this stuff out. Yeah.
And literally write, not dictate, not voice note,
not texting,
not text note, like
handwritten, pen,
pencil, fucking blood dipped in ink, what a feather in ink, like write it.
You want it to be slow because it forces you to slow your brain down and basically filter your emotions, because we communicate internally through what some people call either like packed thought form or emotion. Like even though there's like an internal me and an external me and we're communicating, there's a lot of communication that occurs without words. And that is the most important stuff. That's the most wisdom that you have. So you have to filter it out somehow and put it into words, and writing is really the only way to do it. And so that's the good stuff right there, is the stuff that is unspoken inside of your head that you kind of already know, but then you write that stuff out. So you use the mind storm, and then you refine, and then you just get rid of everything, and then you mind storm again. Okay, are these legitimate? Yeah. Like, are they? How can I overcome? You mindstorm more questions out. And then from there on out, you'll eventually just keep working back and forth through a distillation process, and you'll have a goal that you know didn't come from your ego. It's not, I want a 16,000 square foot house because my best friend has a 15,000 square foot house. Yeah. And it's like, I want fulfillment. I want this. This is why I want to be an entrepreneur, because these are the things that you can read when you get that letter in the mail that says, hey, spend 40 grand on lawyers taking us to court or defending yourself in court or change your logo and your name and all your colors and all that stuff. Because when you get that stuff, because you're going to probably have just spent a couple grand on graphic design and all of this stuff, and then you're going to be like, dang it, like having your whys down solid and knowing that they came from a good place that was not egotistical in nature, that will be a big one. So I know that was kind of a lot, but that's obviously something that I'm passionate about and that I've helped a lot of people establish, and that I've learned through pain, like I've lost a lot of money learning lessons. And if I can save anybody learning those lessons, like, then even just one person, that'd be awesome.
I mean, dude, that's like what, that's what I thought of your book. And this is Brad's book, The Mental Qualification Course. So in Brad's words, the principles, methods, and techniques I use to go from depressed, anxious loser to 1% of 1% and beyond, and how you can too. I read this in just I think a day and a half or maybe two. It was a pretty fast read for me, but what Brad's touching on now is literally right out of here. The points that he's making, the list, the systems that he's kind of talking about, and that's just a precursor of what else is in here, but literally a manual that you can pick up and kind of go through, make notes on, and create a system for yourself to be able to implement the same things that Brad's actually talking about. What about, when did you feel the need to have to do this? You know what I mean? Like, I always tell people, like, anything with self-discovery or self-improvement, to quote, Maslow's self-actualization, right, is it's selfless by nature. Meaning, if you were to find these things and not share them, it kind of goes against what this is all about. Self-discovery and wonderment and like just extending the journey of yourself is about. It's about, I think, sharing and finding things and not going, oh, I'm going to keep this to myself, but as opposed to be like, dude, you got to check this shit out, like what I found. What was your moment of saying, like, I need to get this out to people because I think I found something here that's helped me, maybe it can help some others?
Yeah. Well, as I was transitioning out of the military, my business was still in Hawaii and I was here in Texas, and that was a really weird place for me to be in. Is like I was waking up with like nowhere to be every day, but I'm still paid and I'm like making good money and I'm like,
it's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And it's like, like I don't know like what to do. So there was some definitely like adaptation issues leaving the military, and then also compounded with like not having my business to go to every day. I mean, I had employees and stuff, and the business was still getting ran and we were still doing well. So I started to seek more things to do. And then I got into like, I guess like I kind of always was a source for people. Like people just naturally open up to me. Like I'll be talking to people that I don't even know, and I'll just, whether it's because I ask good questions or that I have a comfortable presence, I don't know. But all of a sudden, like I'm hearing about like that this guy hasn't seen his kid in 5 years, doesn't know where he lives, and he's all this stuff. And I'm like telling the guy like, but like, and we're having this conversation, and the guy's like, man, you should write a book or something, bro. And I'm like, and then like my wife saying it, and like the theme kept coming up. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start writing. And so I wake up pretty early. I try to get 7 hours of sleep no matter what. That's my thing. So really my kids kind of dictate my, if they have trouble going to bed or whatnot. But like generally it's either 3:30 or 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. And so I'm up at 3:30 in the morning. I do my spiritual practice, my journaling, my coffee. And then I'm just sitting down and I'm like, I'm just going to write for an hour. And I'm just going to write whatever comes to mind. And all of a sudden, I'm writing for 3 hours every morning. And all of a sudden, I've written 50,000 words. Yeah. And I'm just like, but what is all of this? Like, this is just like, I just wrote topics. And I was like, but what is all of this, right? And at the time I can't remember the timeline exactly, but I had a mentor, and like we were kind of like talking about it, and was like, man, you live an amazing life. Like you literally like work 4 hours a day and then spend the rest of the time with your kids on your garden, like milking your cows and like taking care of your chickens and like doing whatever you want. And you're making like 6 figures comfortably. And like you have like an amazing house, like, and like, I'm gonna have everything I could ever want. You know, it was like literally everything I've ever asked for, I've been given. I believe that. Like and so we kind of were like, you need to share your process. Like if you have been given these trials and tribulations and all of these things to put you in the place where you're at now, which is ahead of other people in this regard. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but I'm ahead of people in this regard, in overcoming fear, in overcoming self-worth issues, in overcoming depression without chemicals, you know, and in fixing, you know, chronic ailments with natural remedies. Like, you know, we've talked a little bit, I've had all kinds of, you know, illnesses and stuff that like I will not see a Western doctor for, and I will overcome. If I'm still struggling with them, I will eventually, and I have overcome a bunch as it is. And so I determined that like, this is valuable information to people. Like I have been given all of these trials, all of these tribulations, all of these things to overcome. Now I need to document the process and try to help somebody shorten that time frame. It took me years to come out of being this depressed, like back and forth between depression and anxiety, like with no real balance, to now being very evenly balanced and very grateful and just living a life of abundance. Those all came from that. And so I was like, I got to document the process. And so I looked at all of the things that I had written and I started to kind of reformat them. And then I did some basic like literature moves, you know, to make the chapters blend a little bit. But then I cut the vast majority of it out. And I was like, I got to get rid of all of this. Like, you know, I went from like a 300-page book down to 150 because I was like, I don't want to write the self-help book. And I mention it in the book, is like the Pareto principle is your best friend as an entrepreneur and as somebody who just needs help. 20% of your information is going to yield 80% of your results. And so I was like, cut it all out, give people just what they need to hear, a little bit about me, just so that they can see that I'm not just some guy who's written a book and you don't know anything. I have overcome some bullshit. And I was like, there it is, you know, let's put it out there, and hopefully it finds the people that need it the most. But that was really the journey with the book, man. And I mean, it was like a fever dream for like, I think in 3 days I had written like 20,000 words. I intended to sit down for an hour a day, and it turned into like 3 hours a day, 3 hours in multiple sessions a day.
Wow.
So, and it all just kind of came out of me, like almost like a vomit.
Well, it's good, man. Like I said, I read it in just a couple of days, and definitely recommend it. Brad's book, The Mental Qualification Course, you can get it on Amazon. Dude, where can people find you these days? You know, online or otherwise, and engage with you for mentorship, for coaching, or anything else? Yeah.
So I'm A Few Kids Dads. That's AFEW Kids Dad. On Instagram, that's where I'm most active. I used to be the 6-figure stay-at-home dad. You can kind of find some stuff on YouTube still lingering around, probably of that, but I realized that staying at home was not actually what I wanted anymore. I need adventure. So, but yeah, A Few Kids Dad on Instagram. I always like to say I'm a good coach for people who aren't sure whether or not they need coaching, because I don't charge. It is free. There's no sales funnel involved with me, and I'll just shoot you real. Like, do not come in expecting me to confirm that you made the right choice or not. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and we're going to come to the conclusion together that you probably I can already tell you if you have to ask if you made the right question or if you made the right choice or not, it's wrong. But that's the majority of my people. And so usually I end up referring people to coaches that I've had in the past. But like I said, it's totally free. I just do it out of, trying to help everybody out. And so hit me up if you guys have a question.
We'll get all the show notes. We'll have Brad's details, his social links to buy his book on Amazon. Like I said, highly recommend it. And if I had to say a couple words just about today's episode, it would be to remember to be interested and not so much interesting. So with another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid, I'm your host, Jake Thomas, with today's guest, Brad Adair, wishing you all a happy, healthy, and wealthy life. Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure,
Really
man.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot.
Had a blast.